We are going live, and we are live. I've been coughing a lot too, Jose. A lot of that going on.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
Allergies.
I was drinking my tea right now, and I get a little bit. Oops.
It's like. So, good morning, everybody. My name is Brian Armentrout with the Food Safety Foundation. I'm with my good friend Jose Sabal with Sabal Food Safety Consulting. How are you doing this morning, my friend?
I'm doing great, Brian. Lots of work this week, but I'm very excited about our topic today.
Yes, absolutely. And to top it all off, great news last night, right? It looks like the CDC has said, well, if you're vaccinated, you don't need a mask anymore. So it's like, yes, right? So what's interesting is here in Colorado, they're like, okay, well, we need to update the directive and these type of things. And I'm thinking, why? Just all the governor needs to do is say, okay, there you go. You're good, right?
Yeah, I'm not that sure how that is going to play, Brian. I got it. I mean, if let's say that everybody is vaccinated, I'm going to say fine. Who cares? At some point that disease or virus, whatever, is going to, I'm not going to say disappear, but most likely it's going to be basically non-existent. And you understand what I'm saying. But the way that the vaccines work, as long as I understand, I'm not a doctor, based on what we read, is that you may get sick. The thing is that you're not going to die or feel any of the effects of that because your body has the antibodies. Okay, but you may get sick. You may get the virus. Okay, now if you get the virus, you're not getting sick. Can you transmit that? Yes, you can. You can.
Yeah. So we'll see how all this goes. So it will be interesting. So every Friday at this time at 8 a.m. Mountain, 10 a.m. Eastern, Jose and I get together on the Food Safety Chat here. We are live on LinkedIn, Facebook, Periscope, which is Twitter, and YouTube. And we have a discussion around a food safety topic. And it's a ton of fun. Part of the beginning here is letting everybody, say hello, let us know where you're at. We get people from all over the world who join us on this chat, which is amazing. I'm in Loveland, Colorado in the US. Jose is down in Southern Florida, kind of in the Miami area there. And so that's always a wonderful thing. So let us know. Jennifer, nice to see you this morning from lovely California. Stephanie from Germany, thank you for joining us. And Karen is here as well. Really great to have you. One of the things, Jose, that we're getting feedback on from people is I love attending the chat, but there's no meeting, there's no invite or these type of things. And they're right? If you put it in your calendar on Outlook, then you can remember it, which is great. But there's nothing that's really letting you know unless you happen to be on LinkedIn at the right time and it sends you a message. So there's actually an event. So you can set up an event in LinkedIn. And so I played around with this week, and so did Jose. I set up an event for this. And you can sign up for the event, and then it will notify you in advance and let you know. And there's a chat function in there, which is really cool. So maybe this is a good way then to let people know when this is happening. So on my LinkedIn profile, I have a page for the Food Safety Foundation. You can go there, and then the event will be there, and then you can sign up. And we'll do that every week. You can't set up a recurring one, unfortunately, so we'll have to do this every week. So hopefully, guys, that will be a good way to let everybody know when this is happening.
Yep. I'm planning on playing with that, Brian, for our next chat.
Yep, definitely. So we have a couple Michiganders here. We're talking from Osage, and my family's from Iowa, so I have lots of relatives. I know where that is. Interesting. Have you ever seen the show How the States Got Their Shape?
No.
It's a very interesting show of why borders were drawn the way they were. And Michigan reminded me of that. Is how did Michigan get that little chunk separate from the rest of the state, right? You would think that would go to Wisconsin or something like that. That was actually because of a dispute with Ohio on the lakes. So Erie was the line used to be lower, and there was a dispute. Michigan claimed that port, and so did Ohio. And it actually came to shooting. They were shooting each other. And Congress stepped in and said, stop this craziness. We're going to send in the Army. This is nuts. Tell you what, we're going to move the border. Ohio, you get the port. Michigan, we're going to give you this chunk of land over here to make up for it.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
That's amazing.
Yeah. So people from Michigan do the little hand thing. That's where that comes from.
Wow. Okay.
It is. We're full of all kinds of weird information here on the Food Safety Chat. Nothing to do with food safety, but it's an interesting thing.
It is. It is always.
Let's see. Ardell has joined us from Greeley, Colorado, which is about 45 minutes away from me, not far at all. So nice to join us. So, Mr. Sabal,
Our coffee and our tea.
You are the best. Everybody,
Ryan, please come on.
Everybody, one of our rituals here on the Food Safety Chat is to join us with your favorite beverage. I have coffee, of course. Jose has his wonderful tea. So take a sip with us.
Oh, this is good. This is great.
Excellent. Yeah, I got up early this morning, so I had to make more coffee. So if I'm a little extra shaky this morning, you know why. Francisco has joined us. Awesome. And our friend Brian out in San Diego. Karen's commenting about my little Ohio story, so that's always fun. So, what is our food safety topic for today, Mr. Sabal?
Oh my goodness. Are you really, Brian?
Let's hit him with it. What is it?
Can I just cross everything that we have published regarding management responsibilities and management review and put on top of that food safety culture?
It's a biggie, right? And everybody's talking about it, right? Everybody's talking about it.
Actually, one of the things that, and this is for the audience, Brian and I were talking this morning just before the show that this food safety culture, I mean, we can call it food safety culture because it's about food, but I mean, generally, globally, it's about the culture of the companies, and it's about people, and it's about making sure that everybody is doing exactly what everybody's supposed to be doing. And it's also about leadership and how leaders can support the effective implementation of the culture, effective implementation of all of the systems that will help the company to prevent having deviations in all of their operations, not just food safety. Any deviation in the management of the finances is going to impact the company, because then the company needs to correct that issue. And that is the responsibility of the managers, top management.
Oh, absolutely. And I think in the field of quality and things like this, right, we understand process, right? We understand the importance of creating processes, and people understand what they do. But you make a great point. Everybody follows processes. Whether you know it or not, right? When the new person shows up, we'll keep on the finance example, right? When the new finance person has a new accountant who shows up, that person's got to be trained, and they get shown the ropes on here's the reporting cycle, and here's where you find the documentation, and here's what you need to do if your ledger doesn't balance, and all the accounting things that need to be taken care of, right? There's a process with that, and quality can be really, really helpful to the organization, because this is the interesting thing on processes, Jose, is some people think that processes, that just slows us down, right? That makes it harder. The opposite is true. It makes things go faster because everybody understands what they need to do.
Sometimes, Brian, when I'm teaching any of these, whatever class, the food safety classes, it doesn't matter if it's FDA or SQF or whatever it is. I'm always using a very good example. Okay. In a system, people is responsible for following whatever duties were assigned to them. Okay. If they follow those instructions exactly as written, and everybody is doing that, is exactly the same as a gearbox, in a car or in a machine engineering or whatever. They are perfectly matching all of the gears, and they're working synchronized.
Right.
Everything is good. The output is going to be wonderful. Now, if any of the gears is not actually synchronizing with the others, the system is not going to work. And one gear that is not working, the entire system is going to be affected.
Right. Yeah, it shuts down. And it becomes even more obvious when you have processes that involve multiple departments. So think product development,
Yeah.
right? Where you have the R&D team and sales and marketing and procurement and quality and operations and legal, right? Everybody touches
Yeah.
that process. And everybody needs to understand what are the priorities, what should we be working on, what should we be not working on, and making sure that everything is aligned, right? This ties back into this overall management responsibility topic that
Mhm.
we have. And I think in a lot of ways, this is where quality people get confused, Jose, because this is
Yeah.
such a big topic and it's in a lot of ways, it's abstract. Um, I used to be on the SQF Technical Advisory Council, and we would, review the standard and these type of things, and we would get the data from all of the audits. And the thing that was written up, every single year we review this, the thing that was written up the least was management responsibility and review, because the auditors had a hard time
Yeah.
interpreting and understanding what the plant or the company needed to be doing. It's a difficult topic.
Yep. Yep. Actually, Brian, now that you're talking specifically about that, look at this. So for 9 years, I was an auditor. Okay.
Mhm.
And I'm going to use one very good example right now for everyone here. The new version 9 of SQF. And I'm selecting this because, I mean, it's the first one that comes to my mind. BRC, IFS, FSSC, Global Gap, whatever it is, everything is going to be exactly the same because it's a GFSR requirement. Okay.
Yeah.
The first item in the code is about management responsibility, which is exactly one of the topics for us today. Okay. And it says senior site management shall prepare and implement a policy statement that outlines as a minimum the commitment of the site to, well, supply the safe food, establish and maintain a food safety culture, because it's one of the new requirements, establish and continually improve the food safety management system, comply with customer regulatory requirements, and
Yeah.
I'm going to say between you and me, who's the one responsible for this? Senior site management.
Mhm.
Okay. And that, whomever that is, that person is responsible for developing, for preparing, and implementing the policy. If I'm auditing right now, as soon as I arrive and I'm going to address this issue, I'm going to say, I need to talk to whomever here in this site is senior site management.
Mhm.
I want to know how this person developed this policy and why this person wrote whatever is written in this policy that you are showing me. Because
Right.
that's a person that is responsible.
Mhm. Yep. So part of what we want to get into this, right, is kind of bridge that gap between abstract concepts and execution, right? Because I think so.
Yeah.
Jose and I were talking about this before the call. Is a lot of presentations give you the information, but they don't tell you how to do it. So what we're going to try and do here
Mhm.
is sprinkle in how to do these things. And so everybody on the chat here as well too, let us know in the comments. Let us know what things you have done to get to this point of getting senior leadership in the facility on board and creating this policy statement, right? Because one of the things, Jose, you don't want to do is you don't want the quality manager at the site reading through this and saying, okay, there needs to be a policy statement, there needs these type of things. And they go in and they write it, right? They sit at their computer and they write it. And then they take it to the plant manager and they say, here, sign this. And he goes, what's this? Well, it says that you have to sign this if we're going to be in compliance. Oh, okay, whatever, right? And the plant manager signs it and it goes in a book. Because to your point, as a good auditor, you're going to figure that out really quickly.
Oh my goodness, very quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yep.
So this is a perfect opportunity because part of being a successful SQF practitioner or whatever, right? PCQI, it doesn't matter, is there's two sides to this, and people often forget this, right? Because we work in a very technical area, we focus on the technical things, right? We go get certificates and we learn new techniques and all kinds of things, right? But the communication and the people side is as if not more important, right? And a lot of times people in our field are like me. I'm an introvert, right? I would rather, do things by myself and not, those things bring you down if you're in large groups, right? That drains your energy. But you need to communicate this, right? You need to sit down and have a meeting with senior management and say, hey guys, this is what the standard is saying. How as a team are we going to implement this? Because we're the leaders in the facility and people are looking to us. How do we do this? Let's talk about it, right? This is not, and the analogy I use on this is you aren't Moses as the quality practitioner. You're not writing all these things on a tablet and coming down the mountain and telling everybody what to do, because that doesn't work. It never works. And auditors will always figure that out really, really quickly. So you need to develop that with that team. So what are some of the ways that you've seen, Jose, where people do a good job of implementing that?
Well, I'm going to, for a second, before answering your question, Brian, for a second, I'm going to fly the 30,000 feet above. So what's going on? Okay, why is this, push? Well, not push, because systems will never work unless the leader of the company is pushing to make sure that happens. Okay. If you go to the 30,000 feet view, I believe it's in 2018 or 19, the U.S. Roundtable, Business Roundtable, which is the grouping of all of the CEOs of all of the huge corporations, they got together. And for the first time in the history, they said, we are not going to only work for the interests of the stakeholders. We need to make sure that our employees are in good shape and they're working happy. We are going to make sure that our suppliers are like us and they're going to do whatever it takes to provide us very good products. And we're going to make sure that our customers are happy with the products that we're providing, and our products are going to be consistent. That was the first time that it was said. So now, if you go to the conference, the annual conference in Davos in Switzerland regarding the World Economic Forum, and all of these, huge companies getting together around the world, what are they saying? Oh, they are talking about environmental, social, governance, and data. And they're saying that from now on, the scope and the objectives of the company is not just the money that the companies are going to be making. It's about making sure that when the companies are doing that, which is the main reason why people, create companies. Okay, I don't have any problem with that. Okay, I'm pro, making money, of course, but they need to do that in a way that the company is sustainable in time.
Right.
And in order for doing that, you need to take into consideration the employees that are doing the job. Well, that is part of that culture that we're talking right now. And that is the responsibility of senior management.
Yeah. And so as the food safety and the quality who are getting these standards and understanding this, right, we often hear the term managing up, right? You have to inform your bosses and leadership on what they need to be doing for these things and help them understand it, right? And when you learn how to do that type of skill, that's hugely valuable for your career, right? You have to be able to do that.
Yeah, and Brian, there is a lot of and it's growing right now, but there is a lot of buzz. There is a lot of talking in the back about, if you have in a food business, if you have a disgruntled employee, you have a problem with your food defense program. Okay, so my question will be, why then people have we have very powerful discipline program for employees that are not following instructions. And I'm going to say, really? Are you going to make your employees mad so they can actually on purpose adulterate your own products? That doesn't make any sense. That's not the right approach. But it's the way that we have been doing this for years and years. And I'm not sure if I should say centuries, but lots of years. And it's wrong.
Uh-huh. Well, one of the things I used to say to employees in my facilities is we're making cheese, right? And we're making this wonderful product. If you don't feel like you can take that cheese off the line and go home and give that to your grandchild, and you can't, and you have absolutely no doubt about that product, then we're doing something wrong, right? We're making this for people. We're making these products for children, right? We need to always, always keep that in mind. And it was a nice way to kind of link that back and let people know what we were doing. I would sometimes in meetings as well, I would put out, you have a meeting with people and you put out bowls of food and candy for people to eat during the meeting and things like that. And people just automatically, right, they go in, they grab it and they eat it and stuff like that. And I would say, okay, why did you do that? How do you know that I just didn't find that candy out in the street, or that I did something to it or whatever? And everybody's eyes would get really big. And I'm like, don't worry, it's fine. I didn't do anything, right? But there's trust, right? You trust that product. And that bond cannot, if you break that bond, it's extremely difficult to get it back, right? We've talked about before here in the US, we take food safety for granted, right? Because we work very hard at it and we try and maintain these. But the second any of us go to another country, right, we start doubting. It's like, would you like a glass of water? No, I think I'm going to pass.
Yeah. Yeah, I prefer to drink a Coke or something like that, even though that is not that good for you. Yeah, right. That is not going to make you sick.
Yeah. So this policy statement, right, is the golden opportunity for the people leading the food safety system to communicate in the organization and say, hey, listen, here's what we're trying to do with this, right? To your point, Jose, this is making money and doing these things. This is not or, this is and. We need to figure out how to do this. So how do we make sure that our employees understand this? That if anyone in the plant is there and they're not doing something right, they're not wearing their hairnet correctly or things like that, you have, I don't care if it's the CEO, I don't care who it is, you have the right and the responsibility to help them do that correctly. And we expect you to do that.
Yeah. Hey, Bryan, that comment about lead by example. Yeah. How many times you have seen this? Because you have, and I do too. Senior management gets into the processing area and they never wear hairnets and they don't wash their hands and they are not dressing up and so on. Is that a good example?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of the things I used to train my plants on is visitors need to go through training to understand these rules before they go in the plant. If anybody is going into a GMP controlled area, you need to do it doesn't need to be fancy. It doesn't need to be big and be a small PowerPoint. You can even walk them through the checklist that they sign when they visit the plant. But one of the things I would like to add to this, and this would make people's eyes go big, is we would explain the rules and say, okay, you have to wash your hands. Don't touch product. Don't do these type of things. Don't, everybody's got their rings, all the things we're used to, right? And I would say this at the end, and I would train my managers to say this is, and by the way, if you do not respect these rules in our facility, you will be asked to leave immediately. I don't care who you are, you will leave. And people would be like, oh, right? And it would get their attention, right? This is real. This is serious. And we take it seriously. Everybody, you're part of this now. So it was a good way to make sure people understand. I would not allow state inspectors to wear their lab coats into my plants. I'm like, I don't know where that coat's been. Oh, but this is my coat. Yeah. Where were you before here? No. Here's the coat. You need to wear our coat in our plant. And they would, that's good. That's good. Right. It's these little things, right? They add up. They add up.
Oh, yes. And now the other thing, Bryan, that I have in order to close the first question that you asked me before I was explaining, the U.S. Business Roundtable and the 2020 Davos and 2021 actually in Switzerland, they they can basically reinforce this. And there is example in the UK that they are also promoting. And I'm not sure if you know this, but FSA in England, actually those inspectors of the Food Safety Authority in England, the equivalent to the FDA, when they're visiting the facilities, they have a checklist and they're getting trained to somehow measure and somehow start influencing people
Mhm.
in companies to take the right decision based on the culture of the company. So this is happening around the world. Is that we are eventually not looking at that if we don't search for that. But my point is that we need to look at this from the bigger picture. Okay, how can we make these systems better, more effective? How can we reduce the cost of doing business?
Mhm.
Okay, and this is exactly by not having deviations. So your training program is going to play a huge role. And one
Mhm.
of the things that I have found in my experience when I'm helping companies with their food safety systems, one of the potential root causes of deviations is that, look at this one, Brian, the trainer was not qualified to teach a class.
Yeah.
Who are the trainers? What is being used during training? Oh, we have a bunch of videos that we pull from the internet. We have a YouTube video. Really? Is that YouTube video exactly the same as what you have in a written statement? In your procedure for hand washing? Have you validated your hand washing procedure? How do you know that the frequency of your hand washing procedure is the right one?
Mhm.
Because all of those questions are applicable.
Exactly. People learn by doing, right? So, I mean,
Yes.
there's those examples out there that we've seen for a long time, right? The glow stuff for your hands to see how well you wash your hands and things like that. That's how people learn. The information in a classroom setting is nice and it's a good beginning, but learning happens on the floor, right? And people teach each other how to do the roles, right? You have a trainer and a new person and all these type of things. If there's a disconnect there and they're teaching them things that don't follow and they're not consistent, oh, that causes chaos, absolute chaos.
Yes. And when employees look, when the employees observe that the rules apply for some but not for others, that's it. You already
Done.
broke the culture. That's it.
Yep, done. Absolutely done. Um, so that management side of things and getting that to the people and saying, all right, as the practitioner, we're responsible for these things, right? And teaching senior leadership how to do these things that we're talking about. And then putting in different tools to help get that to the floor and making sure that people are empowered, right? Because all of this, if you're in charge of the quality management system and the food safety and all these type of things, and you have the responsibility, but you don't have the authority, that doesn't work either, right?
Yeah.
You have to have teeth.
Yeah, and look at this, Brian. Last week or the week of before that one, I was watching live Marshall Goldsmith, one of the 100 coaches of these huge corporations, live talking with the guy that was for several years the CEO of Best Buy.
Mhm.
And be, during that conversation, one of the things that they discuss is this: look, so someone in the audience, I believe, asked Marshall, "Hey, what about the leaders? I mean, how we know that the leaders have the right capabilities and the right approach in order to, guide the company in the right direction?" And the answer was that leaders are born.
Mhm.
The ones that have that right approach, right ability to say, "Oh my goodness, I'm wrong. I need to change this." That ability is something that people are born with that. Like athletes, anyone that is wonderful in, basketball or football or whatever it is, well, exactly the same way. Now, does that prevent the other leaders to be better? No, of course
Mhm.
not. But they need to understand what they're looking for, because this is about senior management. And actually, I have in front of me, in order to a little support that conversation a little bit more, is that the principles of hygiene of the Codex Alimentarius, which is the guidance document for any of the GFSI standards. They all reference the guidelines from Codex Alimentarius. The new version, which was released last year in 2020, there is a section there that indicates that the food business operators are supposed to apply all of the hygienic practices and food safety principles, HACCP, by the way, the 7 principles of HACCP, in this document, the guidance document, in order to, and one of the bullet points said, build a positive food safety culture by demonstrating their commitment to provide safe and suitable food and encouraging appropriate food safety practices. That responsibility is there for food business operators. So this is senior management. Again.
Good point. So we got a lot of good conversation going here. People answering questions and love it, guys. This is a complicated topic. So one of a really, really valuable tool, and I'll give this idea to people out there so they can think about this, right, is bringing this information down, right? Like we're talking about. How do you take these abstract 30,000-foot principles and actually get them to the floor, right? Because that's where culture is. It's the floor. And one of the things that a company I worked for had an amazing tool. They would put a questionnaire in their products for the product quality. It wasn't marketing. It wasn't what's your income bracket, all these type of things. It was only quality questions. And I protected that like a tiger, right? Oh, we want to add a question. No. And this came from corporate headquarters in France. And on this questionnaire at the bottom was an opportunity for people to tell us what they thought about the product. And we would get this verbatims back from actual users and buyers of our cheese. And they would say, oh my God, I love your brie. It is the best product in the world. We eat it at holidays and my children love it, and keep up the good work. Positive things, right? So instead of here's a complaint, right. It was people writing us to tell us how much they loved what we do. And every week when that survey came out, I would go out and I would put it on the bulletin board outside of the employee break room at the plant down the street. And the employees would wait. They would wait for me to post that so they could read all of the wonderful things that we were doing. And it linked them to the consumer and said, what we're doing here matters and it makes a difference. How I do my job is important.
Yeah. And you know what, Brian? I fully support having a very, I'm going to say, powerful customer complaint program. Okay. It's a very good way to determine how pleased are the customers, because at the end, any company producing any product or providing any service depends on how pleased are the customers. So it makes sense to have that program in a system. But look at this. We are going to be manufacturing, I don't know, bread. Okay, so here's my bread. And I'm going to ship my bread. When I'm doing that, my bread is supposed to have a product specification. If I ship my product out of specifications, I will have complaints from my clients that are already used to receive the product exactly as the specification said.
Yes.
That doesn't mean, and I'm going to use a real example. So there is a protein drink that I'm drinking right now when I'm riding my bike, and I just love it. The flavor is good. The ingredients are good. I believe that it's working in my case. I mean, I'm feeling better. And guess what? The other day I was going to buy a little bit more. I was not able to find it in my regular supermarket. So I went online and I went to the supermarket page and I ordered that. But, we kind of put me in, let me check at the reviews. And I checked the review, and one of those reviews says, your product is the worst product that I have ever tried in my life. Please stop making that product. So even if our products are 100% in compliance, you will always have someone that is not going to like the product. Now,
Mhm.
that doesn't mean that the product is not within the specifications. Any complaint, any real complaint that you receive from a customer about your product, and but you can actually measure and determine that the product is actually within their specification, that complaint is, I'm going to say, not valid, because that is the personal opinion of that person about his own, I'm going to say, feelings about the
Yep.
product, but it's not based on the specification of the product. Now, if you receive a complaint from a customer, and because that customer is saying, you said that the color of the bread is light brown and the color that I received is yellow, you have a big problem,
Mhm.
because that means that your system for releasing the product was not looking at the specifications, and you release something that is already deviating from the specifications.
Right. So this is very, very interesting, and I'm going to make a shameless plug because I have a whole lot to say on this. I wrote a book a few years ago called The New Manager Mindset, and you can get this on Amazon. And I have a whole section on quality systems and how to create good quality systems. And I talk about what we're talking about right here.
Mm.
There's really two different kinds of specifications, Jose. There's the internal specification, the pH and the temperature and all these measurable things. But the consumer doesn't care about. I never got a complaint for a product where it said, hey, I think your pH is a little high. No, right? That's the tools we use to reach the finished product, right? To your point, with your drink, just like this coffee, there are attributes as a consumer that I care about. And if it doesn't match my expectation, that's when I complain. And a lot of people get confused by that, right? Because that's kind of it's a arbitrary thing. But you need to understand, and part of your job as a quality manager in the company, right? You have two buckets, food safety and food quality. And we're talking food quality here. You need to understand what those attributes are that the customer expects in your product. What are those things that if you don't get it right, they're going to be upset, right?
Mm-hmm.
Flavor, bitterness, appearance, all of these type of things. And you need to defend those things. And those then need to be built in back to our topic for today, right around the management responsibility and how you're explaining these things. You need to figure out how to build those in. And consumer feedback is gold, absolute gold for those activities.
Yeah. Yeah. But at the same time, Brian, which is the final point for this one, is that if you're shipping your product to the market and not being in compliance with the specification of the product, and actually I was chatting with Francisco right now, indicate, because he said with a very good point, that I'm getting into unknown waters regarding the specification. I agree with you. Why? Because the specifications many of the times are not written by someone that knows how to write a specification to make sure that you achieve consistency, which is the scope, which is the goal of any specification in the outcome of your production. I agree with you, Francisco.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Products change slowly, right? So you're making ice cream and you have like a moose track ice cream with all kinds of ingredients. And procurement decides to buy a little cheaper chocolate and the quality goes down a little bit and the consumers don't notice. And they're like, oh, okay, good. I'm going to buy a little cheaper fudge now. It goes down a little more, right? So over time, the product you start with and the product you end up with completely different. And to your point, then the
Yep.
consumer tastes that and says, ugh, what is this? This is terrible. This isn't what I expect.
Yeah.
Complaint, right? Complaint,
Yep.
right? So figuring out under the responsibility piece of it, what are those things and communicating that upwards and then translating that into how do you measure those things, right? Because in any organization,
Yes.
what you measure gets managed, right? So you didn't use, this is a golden opportunity to set up those performance indicators, your complaint rates per million pounds, your consumer satisfaction surveys, your compliance to specification, all of those type of things that you then can communicate to senior management at the facility. And what you're doing then as that quality person is saying, all right, you're the health meter for that plant. How are we doing? Are we healthy? Are we kind of sick? Are we on our deathbed? What is going on? because and companies do this all the time, they get locked into their own internal world, Jose, and they think
Yes.
it's just about the budget, or it's just about meeting the order, or having a little more efficient. And how can we cut back on sanitation so we can make more, blah, 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 right? This is all being done for a reason, right? Make money end, right? If you don't have the you're in trouble, right? And then figuring out with those meetings and that responsibility, how do you track that, right? And then back to the communication side. If these things are important, the people on the floor need to understand that too.
Yes.
This isn't something just for senior management.
Which is exactly the communications, the empowerment, and all of these parameters that people should be using for improving the culture. Yes. Making sure that people know exactly what to do and what to do in case that they identified a deviation in the process that was assigned to them.
Right. Absolutely. And that's why I love that example, Jose, of that quality questionnaire I had, where then I could get the direct feedback from the consumer, unvarnished, right? Because people complain only when they get to a certain point where they're fed up, right? There's lots of other people who never complain. They just stop buying your product.
Yep. And you know what, Bryan, KPIs, one of the things that I'm always also telling my clients is that, I mean, any kind of a KPI that you use is going to be useful somehow, because it's going to be measuring a different aspect of the behavior of the company and the execution and the performance and so on. But on a general basis, I will recommend to use KPIs that are focused on prevention, not focused on the reactive action that you are going to take when something goes wrong.
That's a good point.
Okay, so in that case, for example, having some kind of a KPI, some kind of a measurement on the effectiveness of our corrections and corrective actions, that is basically prevention. You are trying to prevent that thing from happening again. Whatever happened.
Good point. Let's see.
And that should go into management reviews. Because if the managers are the ones that are responsible for the operation of the company and the culture and blah, 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 and there is a system to measure how effective is the system and all of the different procedures in order to achieve consistency on the specifications of your finished product, well, management should have some feedback on how well the company is doing. Because at the end, it is the responsibility of senior management that the system works. And senior management may say, oh, you know what? The problem that we're having here is that because the building is too small for our operations, and I need to buy someone that is double the space of this one. And the only one that can put the money for that is senior management.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's see, how are we doing on the comments? So food business, very competitive, and companies keep hiring these process financial people, improvers that cannot care more than their bonuses, right? So the bonus piece on that comment kind of sticks out to me, right? Is you should be building into people's incentive programs a direct link to what we're talking about, right? So if the procurement group is only incentivized on buying cheap, you're going to get cheap, right? Because if I'm in procurement and my bonus is based on buying cheaper things, I'm going to go find cheaper things.
Bryan, one of my professors at the university, and yes, it was quality issues, a mechanical engineering thing. Whatever you buy is whatever is going to dictate the quality of whatever you are shipping. Yes. You buy trash, you are going to be sending trash. You buy high quality, and assuming that your process is the right one, you are going to be sending to the market high quality. So the right way, if you ask me, based on all of these years of experience, what is the right way to produce products? Purchase the most expensive and the most consistent ingredients, and then make sure that your system has matured to a place, to a point where everybody knows exactly what to do and you minimize the internal failures by investing a lot of preventive cost, trainings and equipment and software, whatever, and appraisal cost, anything that is going to help you to measure your activities.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So lots of amazing comments here, right? So what's interesting about this topic, right, is there's a lot of different ways to do this, right? A lot of different ways to skin the cat, as the saying is. So Raphael's making some great comments here. Talking about broken processes, R&D defines a spec. They have lab tests. It's approved by quality. Up to here, nothing wrong, except that the industrial tool may have the capability to have a stable process long run. So it leads to waste and frustration, right? That's why
Yes. Yes, Raphael.
design
Yes.
control, whole completely different topic, right? Is that the analogy I use on this, Jose, is this: in quality, we're the person who enforced the standard, right? So the R&D and the marketing group, and they do all this work to define the product. And then to Raphael's point, right, you need to have plant trials and stability tests and these type of things to make sure that what the marketing group wants is what you actually made, right? So then once that's understood and there's a linkage between those two and they match, then it's quality's job to ruthlessly defend that, right? And keep it that way. That's what quality is. And it's what we're talking about with my coffee and your protein drink and these type of things, right? People complain when something changes, right? And they hate that. They want that experience to always be the same.
Yep.
We need to defend that.
100% with you, Bryan, over there.
Right. So back to our topic then, and wow, time flew on this topic again, right? So putting together, right, lessons, we'll pull this back to the 30,000 foot again here, Jose, is that your job as the champion of quality in the operation then is to train senior leadership in these other functions and these other areas, the expectation and why it's important and why they should care for this in their job, and building in incentives for those things, and then figuring out the right measures, right? So consumer satisfaction, complaints per million pounds, internal audit results, third-party audit results, where someone like Jose comes in and looks at the programs. These type of things, right? These all need to be measured so that then that can get reported up, right? And that doesn't just stop at the plant, right? And that's always been some confusion, right? So we've been talking about senior leadership at the plant, but if you have a large company, this also needs to roll up so that senior leadership for the company understands this, right? And that's the job of corporate quality to facilitate that, right? And those linkages need to be there. But it all comes back to the floor, right? If I'm auditing, if you're auditing, if we're on the floor and we're talking with the employees and they can explain and they can show that linkage and say, oh yes, we get feedback from consumers and they tell us how much we love our product. And I take this product home every now and then. We have product that's short code and I feed it to my family and I'm so proud to work here, right? Okay, now we're on the right track. Now we're on the right track.
Yep. So and basically my last comment before we cut the meeting today. I was reading this article about implementation of culture, and they developed within the questionnaire. There was one question that was asked to the leaders of the company, to the top management of the company, asking them, "Hey, do you think that you're actually helping and supporting the operations of your managers? Do you think that you're empowering them?" And there was an answer. So they asked the same question to the managers. Do you think that your lead manager is actually helping you and empowering you? And there was a 57% gap between those two opinions. What about that?
Yeah.
So people might be thinking that they're doing a good job when they're actually not. And it's because not everybody is actually synchronized, which is exactly the reason why systems are in place.
Yep, absolutely. So Raphael, talking about expensive ingredients and that's, it's an interesting point because, right, it's maintaining that standard, right? And defending that standard.
Yeah.
As long as you're maintaining that standard, you're okay, right?
Yeah, and Rafael got a good point. Rafael, you are right. It's not about the most expensive; it's the most quality product. I will say that you're right on that comment.
Yep, absolutely. So once again, guys, great conversation. Wow, these comments are amazing. Everybody, thank you. Right. So I think the lesson to pull out of is with this piece of management responsibility and how you track that. There's many different ways to do this, right? And don't feel like you have to invent this yourself, right? This is why we get together for these things, so we can share knowledge and information and hopefully give you some ideas on how to do this in your operations, right? There's all kinds of great ways to do this. Figuring out what works best for you and pulling from that is always the best way to do it, right? And food safety, food quality, all the things we're talking about, we do better when we work on this collaboratively, right? So the lesson that we're teaching in the plants of working together is the same for us. Right? We need to work together too.
Yep.
Excellent. Great conversation, everybody. Thank you. So again, if you tuned in late, on our sites, on my Food Safety Foundation, on my LinkedIn page, and Jose is going to do it on his side too, is we're setting up a weekly event. So you can go and sign up for that event, and it will give you a reminder. So hopefully this will be a better way to let you guys know and remind you on these Fridays at 8 a.m. Mountain, 10 a.m. Eastern, that we're going live, right? Because for the people who are here with us live, it's fun, right? You get the interaction and people are talking to each other in the chat, right? And this is why this is so unique and so much fun and why we like doing it. So anything else on your side, Jose, for closing?
No, I believe I'm done. Thank you, everybody, for being here, and thank you for sharing your opinions. One thing that is very important, I'm going to say, you don't need to agree with us. You just need to hear a different opinion.
Well, we do what we do because we have strong opinions, right? We have a really strong sense of good, bad, right, wrong, these types of things, right? And that comes through, and that's why this was so valuable today. So thanks again, everybody, and we greatly appreciate it. Enjoy your weekend, as always, and we will see you back here next week.